as Wikimedian and discuss with each other topics they choose. Each session is curated by African Wikimedians to expand Africa's open movement. Today's host is Cecilus Obanyaya.
Hello, friends of free knowledge. I'm glad to welcome you all to episode 21 of Wiki Africa Hour, titled Commons Inside Out. My name is Cecilus Obanyaya, and I'm your host. The Wikimedia Media Repository, Wikimedia Commons, was founded on 7th September 2004 through the project idea of Eric Moeller. There were two goals for which it was founded. One was to serve as shared hosting space for all Wikimedia projects, media objects. Prior to Commons' existence, pictures to illustrate a Wikipedia or other wikis were uploaded directly on Wikipedia itself, directly per language. So that is to say that the same picture could be uploaded 10 times, 20 times, or even more by different persons. The second larger goal was to create a shared library of freely licensed and public domain images, videos, and audios available for everybody to use and reuse. Nearly 20 years later, the question remains, to what extent has the Wikimedia Commons improved the experience of its users? Has the media repository been living its full potential? Looking at the evolution of platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, etc. What are the possible improvements it could make to better have itself represented on what the foundation wishes to achieve through the recommendations of the 2030 movement strategies? Where do these images that get on commons come from? To help us amplify the discussion and possibly answer these questions, we have invited some very experienced Wikimedians and commonists who have experience organizing and driving contributions one way or the other on Wikimedia Commons. And I would also like to let you know that for the April 2023 episode, one of our guest speakers will be Selina Deckelman, who is the new Chief Product and Technology Officer of at the Wikimedia Foundation. So remember to show up for that episode. But meanwhile, today we have Fiona Romeo. Fiona is based in London and has been working in the cultural sector for about 14 years, leading teams to deliver both digital and exhibition programs. Fiona started her career producing online communities and multiplayer games. So she had always been interested in facilitating the meaningful participation of the public. Her most recent project was a radically inclusive permanent gallery at Welcome Collection in London. Past museums have included the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Royal Museums, Greenwich, London, and the Science Museum in London. She joined the Wikimedia Foundation in February 2020 as Senior Manager, GLAM and Culture. She was also a member of the 2022 Image Description Week Working Group. You're welcome, Fiona. And next, we have Wilson Oluoha. Hello, Wilson. Wilson is from Nigeria, and he's a member of the Igbo Wikimedians user group, and he's also the founder of Igbo Wikimedians Commons Hub, who have mainly contribute to Wikimedia Commons and English Wikipedia. He led the Say It Right campaign on Wikimedia Commons in 2022 to demonstrate how Wikipedia can be used to fight microaggression of deliberate names mispronunciations. He currently is the Wiki Loves Africa Community facilitator at Wiki in Africa, and he's passionate about founding, building, and sustaining communities. And next, we have Ziko, Van Dijk. Hello, Ziko. Ziko is a German author and YouTuber, as well as a wiki expert who is based in Netherlands. He has been a Wikimedian since 2003 and joined Wikimedia Deutschland and Wikimedia Netherlands in 2008. Ziko is also the co-founder of the Klexikon, a children's encyclopedia in German language. He was the chair of Wikimedia Netherlands from 2011 to 2014, and he currently serves as the secretary of the Wikipedia and Education User Group. He's also an official cultural ambassador for Wikipedia at Wikimedia Deutschland. This simply means that he connects GLAM institutions with Wikipedians. Please make welcome these three wonderful guests as we engage them. Hello, Fiona, Wilson, and Ziko. Thank you for being here today. Could you please introduce yourselves briefly, maybe in a line or two, starting with you, Fiona?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show today. I feel like you did a very thorough job of introducing me already. So thanks so much for that. I think the only thing I will mention is, yeah, I joined the foundation about 3 years ago. And before that, I did have experience with the Wikimedia movement, but sort of from the museum side. So when I was at MoMA in particular, we were hosting different user groups and affiliates who would run editing events at the museum. We contributed open data that sort of found its way onto Wikidata. But I have to say that when I was contributing, like from the museum perspective, I didn't know the foundation existed. I didn't really understand that there was a movement. I kind of just knew about the projects. And so that's something I always try to hold on to now that I have this different role and this different perspective, just trying to remember like how rich, but also how complex this movement is, and thinking about ways that maybe we can make more accessible invitations to people outside of our movement to sort of join us. And I think that's something, yeah, we'll get into that later. But thank you very much for having me and for the wonderful introduction.
Thank you, Fiona. And over to you, Wilson.
Thank you very much, Teslos. Excited to be here. And I think you already did an amazing job with the introduction. My name is Wilson. I am passionate about Wikimedia Commons, and I primarily make most of my contributions through Wikimedia Commons. And yeah, currently I'm with the Wiki Loves Africa project, which is starting next week on 1st of March. Yeah, 2023. So this could be this is very timely actually. So I'm going to take every advantage of it as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson. And over to you, Ziko.
Yes, thank you very much, Teslos. Thank you for having us. It's a wonderful thing here. I see the different formats we have online in the Wikimedia movement, and this moderated chat with one topic but different aspects. I find it so great. So you can compare to other formats, and well, I do have a small YouTube channel, but you are doing too much on it to me. It is really, really limited, but it is about wikis and Wikipedia, and I hope we all together can understand this whole thing much more than previously. And I'm very curious what we are talking about and finding out today.
Thank you. And yes, I am a follower from one of Ziko's YouTube channels because he has to. Yeah, thank you so much for those amazing introductions of yourself. And then we start with you, Fiona. In 2020, you joined the foundation as senior manager, GLAM and Culture. Fiona, could you please share the details of your role and how it affects the Wikimedia Commons?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, so when I joined, the role was described as GLAM and Culture. And I think at that time, it had like quite an institutional focus. So it was about museums, libraries, galleries, and archives, and ways that we could bring them into our movement as contributors and as collaborators. We recently renamed our team to Culture and Heritage because we really wanted to broaden our focus to bring in like a much more expansive sense of what culture and heritage should be. So thinking about underrepresented types of knowledge that maybe don't already find their way into institutions. And that's where I think it goes beyond the institutions to also really embrace the Wiki Loves campaigns and other initiatives of the movement that are working by documenting living heritage, languages, all of those rich forms, natural heritage as well, all of those rich forms of culture and heritage in the world, and bringing them into our projects. So why does that sort of bring me to Commons, and why does that make me focus quite a lot on Commons in my work? So as you heard, like I worked in museums primarily before coming to the movement, and they are primarily very sort of visual institutions in terms of what they work with. It's about objects and art and visual knowledge largely. And so then when you think about Commons, it's a very natural fit because that's where we have primarily our images, our videos, our visual materials. So working with images and media. And looking at the history of museum and other institutions' engagements with our projects, I found that actually, while most people have a higher awareness of Wikipedia, actually, when it comes to museums, they were primarily contributing to Commons. Wikidata has also become very important, but they were primarily contributing to Commons. And actually, they've just had a hugely important role in the development of Commons. So, you know, as we know, there are now more than 80,000 images and other media files on Commons. And a recent estimate suggested that content partnerships with cultural institutions combined with the movement's Wiki Loves photo competitions would account for at least 10% of the total images on Wikimedia Commons. So they've been very big and important contributors to Commons, and therefore should also be stakeholders in Commons and our thoughts about how that should develop. The movement's partnerships with cultural institutions have brought in millions of high quality evocative images for use across our projects. And those images don't just illustrate articles about art and culture, they can be found on a wide range of Wikipedia articles. So paintings end up illustrating biographies, articles about historic events, and even broader concepts like play and love. And we know that having relevant images in articles goes a long way to improving their readability and driving engagement. So there's this relationship between museums and Commons, and that I think is a great way to bring them in. But we all know, and one of the reasons I think we're here today is we know that, you know, Commons, it has this beautiful promise to make all of these open access images and media available to the world, available to school teachers or health educators, you know, all this promise, but the user experience isn't really what we want and need it to be right now. And so I was really engaged with community conversations with cultural institutions, but also with affiliates and volunteers about maybe how Commons needed to develop and improve. And, you know, there was an emerging conversation in the foundation about this as well. So I got involved in a working group at the foundation, which is really trying to hear the needs from our partners and communities and think about how the foundation can make a bigger investment in Commons and kind of improve it for all of the contributors and users. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I could very much relate to the fact that, you know, museums or GLAM institutions, you know, they have a place in the work we do as Wikimedians, and it's easy for them to identify with Commons than other broader Wikimedia projects. And I like the fact that there are steps, you know, being taken to introduce them to the sorts of Wikidata and expand their horizon. And like you rightly said, bringing them in is basically about is going to help to widen the scope of our focus as a movement. Thank you so much for that emphasis. And then to commemorate the International Museum Day of 2022 and Global Accessibility Awareness Day of 2022, there was an image description week campaign which had you, Fiona, as one of the members of the working group. Why was the campaign initiated, and what platform was used to add the descriptions? Any statistics that you could share with us?
Yeah, so the question, your first question about why. So, you know, as I mentioned, there's immense value in the media that's on Commons, but something I think we all realize is that while there are 80 million files on Commons, and many of them are of extraordinary quality and value, they can be very difficult to find, and particularly in languages other than English. So one of the things we do in the culture and heritage team often is work with product teams who are developing new functionality or new products to kind of test those products with potential audiences, often the ones who are working sort of in the culture and heritage space. So there are a couple of pilots that we were supporting. One was an add an image pilot where people were being encouraged, like prompted through a newcomer task to add an image to Wikipedia articles. The other one was Wiki Stories, which was like an experiment in more visual storytelling. And those pilots were in Indonesia and in Latin America, primarily, you know, languages other than English. And we found that, you know, even when you develop functionality to sort of support these more visual experiences that we all want to see, actually, if the images aren't discoverable, that becomes a major barrier. So I really wanted to start a conversation with our partners, with the movement, with people who've been taking part in those pilots, to sort of think about ways that we could, you know, not programmatically, but sort of through our edits, through our campaigns, start making image description more of a priority in how we work. And actually the Wiki Loves Africa campaign has really been in the lead here. So, you know, the ESA tool for adding descriptions to images was developed in association with the Wiki Loves Africa campaign. And you just closed an incredibly successful image description event, basically. So we had Wiki Loves Africa come and speak at the Image Description Week. We also had some of the contributors to the Add an Image pilot. So Wikimedia Argentina, Wikimedia Chile also organized events and discussions with some of their partners about image description. But really, it was just a small effort to convene a conversation, really, to see what people were doing and to really try to generate interest. It was inspired actually by Wikimedia Germany's Data Quality Days, where they would just try to get people sort of focused and thinking about a topic. So that was really what I was trying to do there. Just I was very interested in this problem. You mentioned that the gallery I worked on before joining the foundation was really committed to accessibility. The New York Times said, "Is this the most accessible gallery in the world?" So I also brought that interest in just the importance of accessibility and how we could bring that to our projects. So I would say it was just a very modest start of a conversation, and there is so much more still to be done. The Smithsonian will be doing some work in this space this year, like thinking about how they can come up with approaches to image description that are ethical and can also work at scale, so that you could be describing tens of thousands of images rather than sort of tens of images. And I'm always inspired, as I said, by the work that Wiki Loves Africa is doing in this space, because they're really showing leadership in this area. So thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. And of course, you are right when you mentioned that it could easily become very impossible or close to impossible to find these images to use without proper descriptions. Like you rightly mentioned, ISA to even, you know, go the extra mile of adding as many as necessary Wikidata components to such images to make them findable. usable and reusable. If not, it's like looking for a needle in some haystack and all that. So yes, thank you. And I like the fact that the campaign will be amplified this year to maybe have a wider focus towards describing thousands or hundreds of thousands of images. I mean, there are over 80 million of them on Commons. So yes, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Fiona. And as senior manager GLAM and Culture at the foundation, it's highly possible that most GLAM and cultural institutions that get introduced to Wikimedia movement would easily be attracted to Commons, like you rightly mentioned. Fiona, is there a laid down guide on how to onboard such institutions to be able to navigate around this not so pleasant user experience that we have now in terms of using our Wikimedia Commons? If not, how do you bring them on board?
Well, first up, I would say it's typically not the foundation who is bringing these cultural partners to the movement. It's, volunteers who are in that location, who have a relationship with the institution, and it's also the affiliates. And then I would just point to the incredible diversity of cultural institutions in terms of the collections and materials that they hold. Like, if you're talking about a contemporary art space, that's very different from an encyclopedic museum whose materials would be primarily sort of in the public domain. You have large institutions with hundreds of staff and very sophisticated digital teams. And then you have institutions that are very small and primarily volunteer run. So there isn't really like one protocol or recipe that you could kind of lay down. I think I tend to think about 4 different stages of a successful kind of Commons engagement. So the first one is kind of developing the relationship, making contact, and really it's the persuasion piece, like showing the impact. Why should an institution contribute to Commons? How does it align with their mission, their purpose? And how will it deliver sort of impact or benefit to them, to the world, but also still they need to know to them. The second piece is really supporting them around understanding of copyright. So helping them to navigate all of the complicated questions about what material is even eligible for them to release, educating them about the different licenses that are available, and sort of supporting them through that process of clearing copyright and understanding, what they can release and how they might release it. There's a piece that doesn't always happen, especially with some of the large partners actually who have a lot of capacity to engage with the projects themselves. And that's kind of finding alignment with the community or contributors before you start making big contributions. So we've seen sometimes big institutions do an enormous batch upload without necessarily having sort of socialized it much with the community. And I think that piece of making sure there's a good relationship and understanding between the on-wiki communities, the off-wiki organizers, and the institution, that will sort of lead to a more successful partnership. And then the final stage is actually making sure that the images that are contributed to Commons have a good chance of being used on Wikipedia, because, there are visitors to Commons, but really the impact happens on Wikipedia. When images are reused on Wikipedia, that's where institutions see their images showing up in new contexts, having new relevance, and attracting sort of global reach and large numbers. So there needs to be a strategy for like how that can happen. And then, being able to report on that after they've done it and showing, this is the impact that contribution had. And this is how it's actually supporting the mission of our organization. So I think it's kind of all 4 steps, but depending on the size, the collection, the capacities of the institution, they will all look very different.
That's interesting, because before now, I used to think it was solely about perhaps getting them to adopt a Wikimedian in residence. But with you highlighting all these 4 steps, it sort of gives a more detailed line of actions that actually get to happen. And it's interesting knowing that the last step of we of course making sure that the image is reused, it actually stands out for me. At least these GLAM musicians get to know about what it means for an image to have encyclopedic value and all that. Thank you so much, Fiona. And the last question for you, Fiona. GLAM tools help us in tracking metrics, which is quite important to the work we do in the Wikimedia movement. Early this month, we had issues with GLAM organ and Baglama. I recall the GLAM organs issue was as a result of ads blockers. Fiona, any update on the issue with Baglama? And as the senior manager for the GLAM and cultural heritage now, like you mentioned it earlier, is there someone who is precisely responsible for a maintenance schedule for these GLAM tools? And because I recall you mentioned a product team, or do these tools only get attention when they malfunction?
Yeah, this is a really important question. It's been a painful couple of weeks again for our GLAM Wiki communities with various issues around using tools. You know, up till now, most of the tools that our communities and partners rely on for these very particular sort of GLAM Wiki contributions are typically tools that were developed by volunteers and might be sort of maintained by one or two developers. And so outages can go on for some time, and it can happen at, you know, a really bad time for the partners and the communities if they're having to show the impact of their work. So there were a couple of issues with different tools over the last couple of weeks. One of them was, like the Baglama Glamorgan set of tools, and it was understood there that there was sort of browser ad blocking issues, that if you could update your settings, you could still use those tools, but it took people some time to work that out and sort of share the message across. There were also issues with the GLAM Wiki dashboard, which has been developed by and supported by Wikimedia Israel, building on work that was done by Wikimedia Switzerland. And I think there we had already started, the foundation had already started some work with Wikimedia Israel to support the scaling of that product. So the idea was that it should move onto Wikimedia Cloud, where it would have more capacity and they could bring in more partners and scale more affordably. So we were already sort of working to support that transition. I think you will have the opportunity to talk to Selena about this much more in your next Wiki Africa Hour. But I'm sure you've noticed in the draft product and technology plan that's come out for the next year, there's this data and signals bucket, which is about the foundation actually taking more responsibility for the data products that the movement needs. So thinking about what the foundation needs, what affiliates need, and what contributors need. And I'm definitely doing my best to understand what culture and heritage communities and partners really want from the foundation and feeding that into the annual planning process. And we've actually created a page under the Commons product and tech page. I'll share these links in the chat when I'm finished speaking, where we're inviting people to share their requirements so we can do everything that we can to hopefully get those prioritized. Obviously, you know, I'm culture and heritage, so that's my number one priority, and someone in Selena's role has to balance all of the different needs in the movement. But it's definitely been top of mind for me in the last few weeks. And actually, you know, like I said, we were already doing work in this direction, but, you know, the last couple of weeks sort of makes it feel more urgent again as well. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for that explanation, Fiona. And really, we are looking forward to having Selena here answering to some of these things. And I know currently they are doing serious work, but then we can't wait to get insider scoop of what they've been cooking. Yeah. Thank you once again. And with that, we proceed to you, Wilson. Hello, Wilson.
Seslows.
Yes. And currently, you are the facilitator for one of the means through which images find their way to commons. That's Wiki Loves Africa. And Wilson, you've been contributing to Wikimedia Commons before founding the Igbo Wikimedians Commons Hub.
Yep.
What influenced your decision to go for such a hub, Igbo Wikimedians Commons Hub?
Okay, thank you very much. I founded the Igbo Wikimedians Hub. The idea came in 2021, and then we were able to implement fully by 2022. The main motivation or the main drive was because when I joined the movement, I joined from a specialized community that primarily contributed in one of the local Nigerian languages. Unfortunately, I think in English, despite belonging to that ethnic group, my thought process happens in English. So I found myself attracted to the English aspect of contributions. And in the course of doing that, I observed an there seemed to be extreme publicity for Wikipedia and all the other projects, but somehow one of the backbones on which the other projects stood, which was Wikimedia Commons, seemed neglected. And I took interest in Wikimedia Commons, and I was inspired by Uzoma, and she told me, "Oh, you seem to have a knack for this thing, so pursue it." And I did. Long story made short, I started to make contributions, started to lead photo walks, and we got to a point where I realized that it's not that many people don't want to contribute to Wikimedia Commons, they just don't know how. And that was how we came around with the idea for having a hub for community members who are primarily interested in contributing to Wikimedia Commons or to the open knowledge movement via Wikimedia Commons. And thus, IG Wikimedia Commons was born as the Wikimedia Commons arm of the user group. Summary.
Thank you. Thank you, Wilson. And I remember my first encounter with Wikimedia Commons. I'm mentioning this because he said most people would like to contribute, but they don't know how. To a large extent, I felt it was just about putting the image title and selecting the date, and you move on. The big description and the Wikidata aspect of things didn't make sense to me. So it's actually very, very thoughtful of you to have a community of people who will get the opportunity to learn how to contribute correctly towards the Wikimedia Commons project. And same last year, sometime in 2022, I can't remember the month exactly. Wilson, you led the Say It Right campaign on Wikimedia Commons. Can you remind us what the campaign was about in details and what really inspired the campaign? And do you have any statistics of the outcome to share with us?
Yeah, last year was a very interesting year for the hub. We experimented quite a number of projects, a number of ideas that normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to gain expression if we hadn't founded the commons arm of the user group. Last year, we realized that there were a lot of people who actually want to contribute to Wikimedia Commons, but the project seems to have so little publicity or so little awareness. And a lot of people don't know, that the way you can contribute texts to Wikipedia and data to Wikidata, you could also contribute media to Wikimedia Commons. And one of the things we were able to do last year, which I think was super interesting, was called the Say It Right campaign. I think that's what you're referring to as the campaign. It was primarily focused on utilizing or using Wikipedia as a tool to fight the microaggression of names pronunciation. So there's a long story behind how this idea came about, but it has to do with watching a movie in 2016 titled Allied. And I I remember liking the movie so much, I went on Wikipedia to read about one of the lead actors, Margion, and I found out that the pronunciation of her last name, Kotia, was not what I had in mind when I first saw the name. I pronounced Cotilade because I'm English and she's French, and the pronunciation was Kotia. And I saw on the article a listen button that allowed me to hear the correct pronunciation of her name. And I thought hey, I'm African. A lot of times I get my name mispronounced. So almost it's a norm. It's like everybody does it, you know. And what if we had a guide that could teach people how to pronounce names? And because we have Wikipedia becoming one of the most visited websites in the world, if we could utilize the information and the publicity that Wikipedia brings to try to provide a guide by which people can learn to pronounce other people's names, especially people who are in the limelight or who have some level of publicity. And I began to think about it, work around it, and in 2022 we put out an application. It worked, and yeah, it was an exciting project, and it revealed so many things that unfortunately I don't think we have enough time to address each of them. But I'd like to emphasize how important that project was, because sometime later in 2022, it was announced by LinkedIn that they would be introducing a tool that would enable job seekers to upload their pronunciation, a sample pronunciation of their names. So it means this is a global problem. You know, a lot of people have actually lost job opportunities. A lot of people have faced some sort of racist behavior or microaggression as a result of deliberate mispronunciation of their names. And it felt good to know that we were actually solving a real problem, you know, and we were innovating with free knowledge and taking advantage of the tools that were available on Wikipedia. Last year, we had 39 participants participate in that Say It Right campaign, and we were able to produce 1,700 audio files on Wikimedia Commons. I'd like to highlight that some of the people who participated in that project had never contributed on Wikimedia Commons before. They only found out for the first time that you could contribute audio. Many of them had been contributing a lot of text. They had no idea that, you know, and this is where we should take caution when we're trying to fix or remedy the challenges with Wikimedia Commons. We risk trying to present Wikimedia Commons simply as a photo repository, as a graphic image repository, when there is a lot of other things that it can do for us, for the movement, for solving real life problems. And, you know, it was really impressive to see the participation. We were able to also highlight articles on Wikipedia with all of guides. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. We lost you for some seconds.
Tesla's.
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, I'm sorry
Okay,
about
I'm
that.
saying that
It's
we
like,
were able to
go ahead, Wilson, please.
I'm currently in a meeting. Why now? Why now?
Oh, I think he's having a network interruption. Hello, Wilson. We might have to get back to you while we.
I'm sorry about that, Tesla's.
Oh, okay. Can you hear? We can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had some interruption. I was talking about illustrating 1,300 Wikipedia articles using some of the audio. We did experience a number of problems which I think would serve as suggestions for implementing solutions to Wikimedia Commons. And one of them has to do with making deletion requests or modification requests. Sometimes you tag an article for a material for deletion and you give a reason, and then some other editor says probably doesn't respond. Some admin does not respond until maybe 2 months later, 4 weeks, 8 weeks later. I understand that we are all volunteers, but then By the time they respond, between the time of response to deletion or refusal to delete is just maybe 24 hours or sometimes less. And they don't pay attention a lot to the reasons why you are explaining why this item should be deleted. If we say where the objective of this recording project is for correct pronunciation of this name, I am leading this project, and I tell you from our contribution process and all of that there is a problem with this recording, and the admin says no, I think it's correct, or I think we should go with it. I think the pronunciation is okay. We could have variable or varying pronunciations, you know. So we had that little face-off with some of the admins of both Wikipedia and Wikimedia Commons. But yeah, it was a great project, and we will be doing a larger scale later in the year, and we have also come up with an idea to utilize the content that we have recorded, the audio content that has been uploaded on Wikimedia Commons through this project, and having them handed over or utilized by actual players in the space, talking about people in broadcast, people in journalism, etc. So yeah, it's just baby steps for now, but I think it's a great trajectory.
Wow, thank you so much, Wilson. I, for one, was very much impressed with the project. And who knows, since a lot of people rely on the Wikimedia projects like Wikipedia for, very quality information, who knows, by the time the LinkedIn guys will get to have this name pronunciation tags, they might, make use of what we have in our repository. And yes, I always love the idea that, we could show people that the Wikimedia Commons has beyond just images and videos to offer. So well done. And we're looking forward to seeing it scale up to a higher level this year. The Wiki Loves Africa Wiki Loves Africa 23 photo contest will be starting on Wikimedia Commons on 1st of March. As the Wiki Loves Africa community facilitator, Wilson, what plans have been put in place by the Wiki Loves Africa International team to help, let's say, new contributors or new participants and photographers that will be joining the contest?
Okay, thank you very much, Ceslaus. This year's Wiki Loves Africa, it's very interesting and very exciting so far with the preparations. This year we're focusing on utilizing a community-centric approach. So there is a lot of emphasis on local events, community members who have constantly over the years been part of the Wiki Loves Africa events, and would like to give them as much support as they can to ensure that their individual community programs are super successful. And because we understand that when we have success in these levels, or in this at these lower levels, or at the levels of communities, it becomes really easy for us at the international level, not just for the jury process, but also for data collation, and to actually measure the impact that Wiki Loves Africa is contributing to the entire movement. It is still arguable, however, that Wiki Loves Africa is the largest photo project in the continent. But hey, I'm yet to hear of another which is bigger. This year we'll also be focusing on collaborations. We have some countries who have multiple communities in organizing Wiki Loves Africa. So rather than everybody independently running their activities, we're encouraging a lot of collaborations. We're encouraging a lot of partnerships. We're encouraging a lot of people to work together towards the theme of the year, which is climate and weather. And the timing couldn't have been better than what we have now. And I think it's the opportunities are huge, and the possibilities of output is very interesting to expect. Also, we'll be focusing on trainings on licensing, skill development, skill acquisition, taking pictures. We recently had one with one of the communities in Nigeria. We'll be paying attention also to other communities across the continent who we're encouraging them to have these events around developing capacity for members and participants of their individual communities. This year, we also have an interesting feature where we'll have a partnership with the African Knowledge Initiative. We'll be sponsoring one of the prize categories for the African Environment Prize for the Wiki Loves Africa year 2023. It's an interesting coincidence that our themes are linked around climate and weather. And so beyond having photo contests and photo walks and photo, we're also going to have small editing events around the topic of climate and weather that will be part of the Wiki Loves Africa event for the year. So yeah, it's exciting, and we're launching next on the 1st of March 2023, and yeah, we're looking forward to all of the exciting submissions that we will be experiencing.
That sounds very amazing, especially the community approach or the local community approach to the contest this year. That can be the game changer that would give us the kind of stats that we are yet to see in the contest.
Exactly.
And I like
exactly, Ceslos.
Yeah.
Actually, we want
like,
we want to make sure that we cover more communities in the coming years. An interesting byproduct of the Wiki Loves Africa is there's new communities, and yeah, we're hopeful that so much is going to happen in the coming days, especially with regards to founding new communities.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Wilson. And the other element I actually like is, whilst the African Knowledge Initiative environment or African environment campaign is going on with the general content creation on Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects, the Wiki Loves Africa could help, put faces to the respective climate change challenges that have been creeping on us in Africa over the years. So yes, it's a collaboration. I'm definitely looking forward to see its possibilities by the time the contest launches come 1st of March. Thank you so much, Wilson. And with that, we are now coming to you, Ziko. Thank you for being so patient with us and being the last person that will be engaging before we move to the Q&A segment of the episode. In your book,
please,
Understanding...
May we were talking
Okay.
about Wiki Loves Africa,
Yes,
and
please.
I love it so much because it really makes a difference. You mentioned we have this lexicon, this German encyclopedia for children. And we find it very, very important to have good texts that are understandable for children, but also quality images. And it was quite difficult to find for several, for example, African countries, good images when we wrote most of the articles around 2015, 2016. And now in the time of the pandemic, I went back to those articles and Wikimedia Commons, and it was such a difference how many images you have now thanks to Wiki Loves Africa about Togo and Malawi and Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso, I remember. And it's also wonderful that you have every year a different topic, isn't it? The habitat and Africa on the moves. And that's wonderful. So I also like Wiki Loves Monuments, but this is really creating a very high percentage of images you can use in our lexicon, for example, but also in Wikipedia. So how they say in English, to make a difference. That's really Wiki Loves Africa.
Thank you so much, Ziko, for handing Wiki Loves Africa her flowers. Yes, I actually love the fact that it's one of the Wiki Loves contests that one of the leading ones, I would say, in terms of closing the content and knowledge gap about the African continent. So yes, each year there is a new theme, and we've had, like you said, Africa on the move. We've had play. We've had home and habitat. We've had health and wellness that preceded the COVID-19 era. So yes, thank you for that. I would say endorsement of Wiki Loves Africa. Nice. And now, coming to yourself, Ziko, with the questions. In your book, Understanding Wikis and Wikipedia, you described Wikimedia Commons and Wikidata as having the task of collecting, curating, and providing content. Um, Ziko, to what extent can you say that the Wikimedia Commons itself has delivered on these tasks?
Yes, indeed. So you could say the short answer is yes, because we see on Wikimedia Commons there is activity. You look at the recent changes, people are uploading, and it works. Yes, it works. But on the other hand, it is difficult to understand, does it work well, and how could it work better? Because you see people uploading, and then later you ask her, so how was the uploading? And she says it's terrible, it's frustrating, there was a crash down of the system, and I lost this, and etc. So you do not learn of that if you only look at the numbers, and 90 million files is very impressive, but it's also, I don't care for numbers. Yes, I care for what is the result, how usable is it, and what is the user experience. Do people want to come back? And I'm afraid that there's a certain filtering effect, and we are the people who stayed with it, who didn't leave. But yes, I would say Wikimedia Commons could deliver better on these tasks. But then again, it would be interesting to compare it to other websites where you can share images and maybe for different purposes. So I had a look at other websites, and it's quite interesting what you see there.
Yes, yes. Like you rightly said, Ziko, it works. But then when we, let's say, place it side by side with Flickr, for instance, you might rightly find that, okay, it could really improve on some features and some user experience tools and whatnot. Yes, that
Yes, or
makes
for
absolute
example,
sense. Okay.
if you Google for it, there are many websites that allow you to monetize, so that you can get money, and it's very few money. So I don't think it's really a viable concept to earn a living. But yes, it's often a freemium premium model. So they say, come to us, it's free, you can use the images for free. And when you click on the image, then it is, well, attribution. Okay, with on your website a certain href, and only 5 images per day you can download, and this restriction and this. And if you pay, then you come to the much bigger collection we also have in our premium model. And many people pay for that because the alternatives are not that great. Wikimedia Commons is an alternative, and these other websites, they are often for bloggers, for YouTubers, and often the images must be aesthetic and Wikimedia Commons as an educational website, it can be different from others and stand out. But if you compare how those other websites say why they are so great, yes, a good search is very important, and the ease to upload. How easy is it to upload? And other websites, you can link it with a Lightroom and other Photoshop and other programs. So we are really behind that, and it would be important to close the gap. If you think of photographers who have been in a village or in a city for 50 years and they retire and they want to do something with the images, will they go to Wikimedia Commons or to a different website? That's the question.
Interesting definition there. I don't think I've heard about the freemium premium definition that you just used to categorize these sites. And yes, funny enough, the Wikimedia Commons has better quality and much more diversified content than most of these sites. I think it was myself and Wilson who were discussing about a possible virtual exhibition to show these guys who are hunting for free images up and down that there is Wikimedia Commons, and we have tons, we have millions of this. So it's actually necessary to look at what these other guys out there that are even taking money for this are offering and see how best we can equip our own to function better. Thank you so much, Ziko, for that emphasis. And an open letter titled Think Big was written by you to the Wikimedia Foundation in October 2022. You raised some concerns around commons, like those of them you've mentioned. One of those concerns, or two of those concerns, were inclusivity and, of course, the user experience. We are always talking about this, whenever we mention 2030 movement strategy of the Wikimedia Foundation. Ziko, what do you think of Wikimedia Commons in terms of inclusivity, for instance, and to a large extent, some of the user experience features we just described?
I agree with you that diversity and inclusivity to make it better usable for people who do not understand English. I think Wikimedia Commons could stand out, and that would be a great chance. So how this open letter happened to become? There was in last August, we had an online meeting of the Commons photographers user group, so people who take pictures and upload them to Commons. And there were a lot of complaints about Wikimedia Commons, and someone said there should be like an open letter, and then I did the mistake not saying no loud enough. So I was finally the one who combined it and asked other peoples, and some of the peoples who helped me with the text, they didn't want to be mentioned that they helped me. I don't know why, but it was very interesting to talk to the people and get this input. And it's a very serious thing, and there are nearly 500 people so far who subscribed, and I think we still need a banner on Wikimedia Commons. I'm not good enough to know how to do that, but it is actually nice to see there's so much. When you ask people, they are much more interested in Wikimedia Commons than you would think otherwise. And I think inclusivity, the language problem, for example, is one. But I have an example from the lexicon. I saw we have articles about nose and fingers and hand and foot, and I wonder, do we only have white people's body parts, or is there more diversity? And I was surprised. It was quite good. But for example, we had no food that wasn't very pale and white, and I went to Wikimedia Commons. And how do you search on Wikimedia Commons for feet that are non-white? Yeah, it's a challenge. And I typed in feet, and then I saw the many images, and later I was searching via the category flip-flops by country. And then those flip-flops, they are on feet, isn't it? So it's, yes, how can we do that better? And I also saw there was one image in this stream of images. One image had a sexually explicit content. I don't want to talk about details, but I thought, well, for me, it's not a catastrophe, but imagine I'm a pupil, a student. I am 14 years old, or I am in a university or in a course in the neighborhood and so, and I wouldn't like that. And the thing is, if ask Wikipedians, is this a problem? Many Wikipedians will say, oh, it's not a problem. And 10 years ago, Jimmy Wales wanted an image filter, and we don't like it. It's censorship and etc. But if you ask a teacher, what do you think of this issue? Do we need a kind of image filter or some mechanism to prevent that? the teachers would give a totally different answer. So I think if you want to have a big plan, think big about Wikimedia Commons. You should not do simply a community wish list survey, because that's too limited for the people who are dealing with Wikimedia Commons.
Interesting analogy, Ziko. And yes, the Wikimedia movement is filled with people who are very passionate about what they do. So I'm very glad you couldn't say no, because that helped us to, to see such a very interesting letter that highlights most of the problems that we easily overlook. Take, for instance, the fact that the interface is only on English language, for instance. I myself wouldn't have noticed how much of a problem that was before the letter. But then I had to put myself in the shoes of those who speak Deutsch, for instance, those who speak French, and those who speak Italian. What happens to them if they want to use the interface? So yes, it was really interesting to know you couldn't say no to making that letter public, and hopefully something good will come out of it. And Zico, in the letter you emphasized, before we got to the emphasis, the open letter was of course signed by over 450 Wikimedians, and the letter didn't only contain the problems that you highlighted. You also found time to mention, and I quote, quick solutions for the most urgent problems. Ziko, for the interest of those who didn't digest this letter, could you share some of these urgent solutions that you think the
Yes.
Wikimedia Commons could improve on? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. The people who signed the letter, they are mostly Wikipedians, because other people from GLAMs or educators, they often wouldn't know how to sign it. Because you have to click there and do this, and it's complicated, and have an account and these things. There it starts, all the problems. I would say, so I'm not going to read all of the letter, but I have here one paragraph I would like to read. So this is the core of the open letter, I think. On the one hand, we strongly welcome quick solutions for the most urgent problems, such as the upload of content. On the other hand, we believe that the improvement of Commons is not just a software problem. We should have a broad discussion to find out what kind of sustainable platform we need in the future. And well, in my book that you mentioned, I have a chapter about the owner of a wiki. And an owner of the wiki would first be certain about what are my goals with this wiki. So what's the goal of the Wikimedia Foundation with Wikimedia Commons, actually? And many would say, oh, we already know that. But for example, is it a goal that we attract photographers to Wikimedia Commons that still are not? Like your uncle in your city, and who was photographer for many years, and now for a newspaper, for example, and now how can we encourage him? Yes, and maybe also encourage him to go later to Wikipedia and embed the images in the Wikipedia articles. So would be the first question for a wiki owner like the foundation, and then make an analysis about other websites that they are competitors. It's a kind of competition. And who are the stakeholders? Who are the people who make use of it? And if you work with personas like the stereotypical Wikipedian, the stereotypical teacher, for example, I think you would get a lot of insight and have an idea how. Imagine this: how would Wikimedia Commons be built if we would start again? If it wouldn't exist, how would we do that? And it doesn't mean that you have to create a new Wikimedia Commons, but the thinking, or this post-mortem. So you sit together in your company, and then you say, okay, our company, it just crashed. It didn't do yet, but what if? How would you sit together and talk about as if it already has failed, and what would you have done differently? And in that situation, you still can talk about what to do differently. And this kind of thinking. Well, in Japan, they have a certain way how to improve things. It's in a company. There's a certain word, I forgot it, but incrementally, step by step, always constantly making the thing better step by step. That is one strategy. And the other strategy would be like when I lived in Germany, in the city, there was a new mayor, and the mayor thought that there must be a reform of the administration of the city. So for over a year, he talked to many people, he made a plan, and everyone could give objections, etc. And after a year, he implemented that plan in one big step. So that's a different strategy. I don't know which one is better. Maybe you can combine it somehow. But what I have seen now from the foundation, so I was invited to a talk, and we had foundation people in our German online meeting, and I have the impression they are busy with some very concrete things. That's good. But this think big, yeah, how to improve the whole thing so that everything fits together. That is very difficult and challenging. I see they really want to help us. Yeah, the foundation people, they really want to improve something and make something good for the community. But if you have this big challenge, it is so overwhelming. And if you get closer to have a closer look, it looks even bigger. You know, and then you try to find your way. Where is the way how to approach it and make something already, and not having a big step over 5 years. And I admit it is very challenging, but I think that people should still subscribe, sign the letter to emphasize these people in the foundation who do something for Commons, and it is quite a small team now. So they need more support within the foundation and also the rest of the movement. Yes, it's not criticism. The open letter is not criticism. It's just a push and a gentle push in the back. We support you. Please go on. And you see how emotional I am, because yes, like you and others, we have spent quite some time on Commons, and we want to see it around in the future.
Wow, that was an interesting overview of these, very imminent solutions and how we could even go about it. And in all these that you've said, Ziko, the question that keeps ringing in my head is, if Commons was to be built now, what would it look like? Bearing in mind that there is Instagram there making waves, that there is Flickr ahead of its game, if I would say. There is YouTube making upgrades every now and then. Because if it were to be built now, all these competitions in codes will be put into consideration to make sure that whatever we'll be offering to Wikimedia Commons would match and perhaps be sustained out there. Thank you so much, Ziko. And lastly, Ziko, you emphasized on your willingness to engage with a dedicated Wikimedia Foundation team on these roadmaps and solutions you just highlighted. It's been 4 months since you sent the open letter. Is there a maybe reaction from the foundation? I know that there is a topic going on around tools on Common Stock page now for the foundation to maybe have a discussion with active contributors on Wikimedia Commons on how there could be a serious engagement between the two hub and Commons. But then aside that, and I know there is also now a dedicated person that functions as community specialist for Wikimedia Commons and Wikidata. I think that's a Benedict Ude himself. So is there any particular reaction to this letter? Yeah.
So we had this German online meeting, and maybe there will be a similar one in English. And I was in a call with several people in the foundation, and I cannot say what we talked about there. It wasn't quite spectacular, and they will reach out in future, I think. But yes, we saw always that links belong together. Yeah? Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, Wikidata, and other of our Wikimedia wikis, and that makes it very complicated to listen to everyone. And yes, I'm just a small volunteer, and making the time it is challenging, and I didn't know what I was getting into it. Yes, but this is only one element, one piece of going on. And I personally think, well, I have ideas in my head. Yeah, you have a lot of ideas and others, but we are still at the moment where we should be open for questions, asking more questions, and not being our Wikipedia nature is, oh, I know it, I write it down, and I think everybody of us should be open for that, and not say I already know it, and then we have the risk that people are left out, many opinions are left out, and I don't think that Wikimedia Commons should be just for Wikipedians and Wikipedians' problems.
Awesome. I mean, it's interesting knowing that at least there were meetings that involved some discussions around the letter. And yes, like you lastly mentioned, Wikimedia Commons shouldn't just be for Wikipedians, by the way. Everybody who is a lover of free knowledge should partake in what it has to offer. And the work is ours, in the movement to make it as accessible as possible by many individuals. And with that, I would say thank you so much, Fiona, Wilson, and Ziko for answering the questions raised so far. We now move to the Q&A segment of the episode, and hopefully someone from the audience would have a question or two for you guys. So you're welcome to ask your questions if you have any for Ziko, for Fiona, or for Wilson.
Let's see. So before the questions coming, Saslaus,
Okay.
I would like to express my admiration for Ziko's work. I'm a big follower. I read your work. I watch some of your videos, and I think all of the points you are making are very valid, especially for those who have vested interests or passion with the media aspect of the open movement. The possibilities are huge, and whatever changes, just like you have said, that should happen with Wikimedia Commons should be communal, should come from a community perspective, user perspective, particularly. And particularly, what I'm going to take away from this meeting is that question you asked about if we were to rebuild Wikimedia Commons today, what will it look like? That's my mind just went ablaze when you asked that question, because I started to picture if Wikimedia Commons has to compete with all the other photo repositories in today, 2023, what would that competition look like? That's a huge question that I'm going to ponder on throughout for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wilson. I particularly have a community question for you, Wilson. And they say it's right campaign enjoyed a massive number of new participants. Wilson, could you please share some of the challenges that were common amongst these new participants?
Okay, there is a myriad of challenges that I experience with new participants. Some of them are project specific. Some of them have to do with basic knowledge of the open movement. But one of them, which was most prominent, was the fact that there seemed to be a, should I say, lack of knowledge, a depth of knowledge around contributing or anything, general knowledge about the Wikimedia Commons project. A lot of people only know the name. They don't really know why it's there or what it's there for, or what the possibilities around that project are. And so we had to do basic trainings around talking about Wikimedia Commons. Then there was also the problem of locating files. I mean, this is more or less a national anthem now. searching through Wikimedia Commons is hell. Even if you are an experienced editor and you have to go through, which is more or less like the easiest for us, is searching through categories. Basically, you can only find what you have seen if you're searching through categories. If you have an idea where it will be. So we had that issue. We also had the problem of inexperience and hardware. For the Say It Right campaign, we used Spell for Wiki app, but there are other apps that were available, but including LinguaLib. But we stuck with Spell for Wiki because of its portability. Since we were training people to contribute and we couldn't get all of them to a space and try to teach them how to record audio, we depended on them making contributions the easiest ways, the easiest steps. So Spell for Wiki was, out of all the options we had, was the easiest, but it had the problem of producing low quality audio. So if we were about quality, we would be talking apps like Audacity and using recording equipment like the portable microphones or Shure mics and things like that. But of course, we were working within a budget and we had to do the best that we could with what we had. So we also had the face-off with admins of both Wikimedia Commons and Wikipedia. I wouldn't comment on Wikipedia because that's becoming more or less a norm. But in Wikimedia Commons, we had the issue of admins having not really understanding the scope of the project and what we were trying to do, and sometimes making these administrative decisions without consulting those who were leading the projects before you made the decision. Another huge problem was with categories. It is very difficult to move files from one category to another without doing it manually. You have to do, so imagine the Spell for Wiki app where one editor makes about 300 errors in recording, and we have to move all of those files individually from the wrong category they were in into the correct category that they should have been in. So yeah, we had all of that, but it was really good because it showed us the possibilities that Ziko has just highlighted about what Wikimedia Commons should look like. You know, in today's media world, in today's media space, in today's internet, what should the largest repository of media actually look like? Is it a library that once you enter, you can find your way around or out? Or should it be somewhere you go to and you are not in a hurry to leave because everything just seems so accessible?
Yeah. Thank you so much for those challenges you highlighted that the newcomers had, because sometimes we forget that we were once newcomers and almost forget what it will look like for people who are meeting, let's say, Wikimedia Commons or any wiki for the first time. There is another question from Nkemo Sigwe, and it says, do the newcomers understand copyright issues as well as privacy matters in taking and uploading? Wilson?
This is not related to the Say It Right, but I'll give you my from my experience running the Igbo Wiki Commons Hub. The answer from me is no. A lot of newcomers don't really understand the copyright issues, the challenges, the why of it, and what the original intention of having copyrights around free photos are. Even recently, I saw one of the participants in one of the WLX events soliciting for photos from friends and family so that they could upload for their submissions in the ongoing events. And I was thinking, wow, this is bring up a lot of problems in the future. And that is why in the Wiki Loves Africa, there is a lot of focus around trainings. That's why we will be paying attention to providing clarity on what your submissions should look like, so that it benefits the movement, it also benefits the contributor. and it benefits everyone who comes across the content. So it more or less highlights the importance why before we have photo-related WLX events, a lot of attention should be paid around. We shouldn't just assume that people know that when you get to the page that says CC by SA 4.0, we expect everybody to just click 4.0. You know, it's the reasonable thing to do. But they don't really know why they should. They don't really know the importance, and they don't really know the implications if there are complications or complexities in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Wilson. I think Fiona has a question for you, and it says, I've noticed that the Commons homepage is infrequently updated. When you're working on campaigns like, let's say, Wiki Loves Africa and Say It Right, are you able to highlight the best content there?
Oh, there seems to be, from our experience, this is a very interesting question. So I'm going to be a little bit direct. There seems to be some sort of closed door arrangement or closed door policy around what happens on the homepage of Wikimedia Commons. I say this because it appears as like a distant community in some sort of way, where how do I phrase this more politely? There seems to be a disconnect between Wikimedia Commons community and Wikimedia Commons members or participants or contributors. Like take for instance, the first time we last year we had Wiki Love Africa. One of the submissions for Wiki Love Africa became the third favorite photo from the Picture of the Year POTY event. And a lot of people in my community, in the local community where I am, were finding it difficult to understand how the selection process for POTY, that is Picture of the Year, took place. You know, with Wikipedia, the editors and the admins are in your face all the time. You know, it's very bustling, it's active. It's hard to actually miss one of the major events. But with Wikimedia Commons, you just stumble on what's going on. You just log in one day and you see a big banner that says, "This is our Picture of the Year," and you're wondering, when did we even start going through the selection process? When did we have submissions? What's the jury like? You know, you just stumble sometimes on some of the events. So yes, Wikimedia Commons seems to have disconnect, some sort of disconnect from our perspective.
Thank you very much, Wilson. And Florence just mentioned that it's not actually closed doors, as there are expressions. Yeah. And that's probably is the last question.
You see, sorry to cut you, Ceslaus. You see,
No
just like what you said not too long ago, where you said sometimes we forget that what it feels like to be a newcomer. Now, if you ask me my experiences as an experienced Wikimedian, I have none, because I'm trying to an extent, I have gotten used to what the situation on ground is. But I'm speaking now as one who interacts with newcomers all the time. So while this information might be in their faces or a click away from their pointing device, we're assuming that they actually know these things. We're assuming that they are aware that, you know, it's just there. Can't you see it? You know. So that might be where we are mixing. That's what I mean by closed door. It's a disconnect. I think disconnect is the proper word. You know, we just assume that, oh, if you come to Commons, it's self-explanatory, but we don't sometimes realize that we have this opinion because we're experienced. What about the new folks? What about the new people? What about those who are participating in contests like Wiki Loves Africa for the first time, and they've never heard about Wikimedia Commons? It's their first time. You know, things like that. So we need to come from that. We need to have that newcomer approach, that fresh eyes approach. You know, someone who doesn't have any experience whatsoever in the movement, will they find their way around a project like Wikimedia Commons?
interesting discussion, but then we don't have all the time in the world to continue this very subject. There is a lot to discuss around Wikimedia Commons. Yes, I totally agree. We should maintain the newcomer approach, fresh eyes to things in order to really carry everybody along while making the necessary progress. And that's the end of the Q&A segment. We now proceed to the news updates for the episode. And thank you, Wilson, for answering these questions that were raised. And thank you also to those of us who asked the questions. And with me today to share the news updates is Noni. Hello, Noni.
Hi, Ceslaus.
Thank you for doing this. Take it away.
Not a problem. Not a problem. The dates for the Wiki Loves Africa 2023 contest, theme Climate and Weather, kicks off next week, Wednesday, March 1st, and will run until April 30th.
Yeah, so do endeavor to participate because it's raining prizes once again. And the African Knowledge Initiative is even sponsoring a prize amongst the list of Wiki Loves Africa 2023 prizes. The Afro Sounds Project Edit Contest by Free Knowledge Africa is starting on 1st of March. For more information on participation, please visit the Afro Sounds Project meta page.
The Wikimedia Foundation's Community Resources Team and the Middle East and Africa Regional Funding Committee invite you to apply to become a committee member in the Middle East and Africa region. The new deadline is March 6th.
WikiLearn, the online learning system created by the community development team at the Wikimedia Foundation, has come out of beta testing and is now ready for general use. It also has a major new feature, which is the course content translation feature. You can read all about it on the WikiLearn meta page.
The technical engagement team is interested in talking with active contributors to Wikimedia Commons about finding more ways for the Commons community to use ToolHub. If you're interested in discussing our proposal, or if you have your own idea to propose improving ToolHub integrations with Commons, please join the conversation at Commons Tools discussion page.
The Wikimedia Steward Elections 2023 voting is on. Eligible voters are invited to review the list of candidates and vote. Deadline is 26th of February 2023 by 9 p.m. UTC.
The Movement Strategy Forum needs your feedback. Kindly fill the feedback survey before 23:59 UTC on the 26th of February.
And there are several open options for submissions and volunteering. First is the the African Knowledge Initiative, call for local organizers for those interested in organizing the Africa Environment Month 2023 campaign. Is on for you to submit proposals, and it ends on 28th of February. You can find a link to apply on the Wiki Africa Hour meta page on the newsroom section.
Intending Wikimedia Hackathon 2023 satellite event, who cannot attend the in-person hackathon event in May during Athens, Greece, are welcome to apply for rapid grants to host the events. The deadline is the 20th of March.
And for you to learn and get inspired, the episode 8 of the Wiki Move podcast is now available. It's a podcast run by the Wikimedia Deutschland. It's about movement strategy, this particular episode. Please do listen to it.
The Wiki Loves stats tool now includes Wiki Loves folklore. Updated stats for all the 2023 participants can now be found on the Wiki Loves folklore meta page.
The new members of the 2023 Ombuds Commission have been announced. Please visit the meta page to find out who they are.
Results of the Universal Code of Conduct Enforcement Guidelines vote have been published, with 76% of participants voting in support of the enforcement guidelines. Stats for the votes are available on the voting statistics meta page.
Thank you so much, Noni. And
Thanks.
That brings us to the end of the news updates. You can view all the news updates in the newsroom section on the Wiki Africa Hour meta page for all the links and the action points. All Wikimedia projects and platforms are precious when it comes to the roles they play in the open movement. None is more important than the other, despite Wikipedia looking like our favorite child. It's great seeing the recent facelifts on Wikipedia. However, if we must achieve the recommendations on the 2030 movement strategy about inclusivity, user experience, for instance, amongst other things, then all Wikimedia projects deserve these improvements that could help and make better the functionalities, especially for the users. Achieving the 2030 movement strategy is everyone's duty, the foundations and the communities alike. And as long as we keep having such conversations like this, and things definitely would improve over time across board. That being said, there is an upcoming conversation. That's the April 2023 episode of the Wiki Africa Hour, where one of our guests would include Selena Deckelman, who is the new Chief Product and Technology Officer at the Wikimedia Foundation. On behalf of the Wiki in Africa team, I say a very big thank you to you, Fiona, Romeo, Wilson, Oluoha, and Ziko Van Dijk for finding time in your respective busy schedules to honor our invitation. I also thank everybody for showing up. I remain your host, Ceslos Wonaya, and I wish you a happy weekend. Endeavor to sign up on the Wiki in Africa YouTube channel to keep tabs on future episodes of Wiki Africa Hour. See you next time.
This episode of Wiki Africa Hour was hosted by Ceslos Obanaya. Let us know what topics you want to discuss and join us next month on the same channels. Subscribe to the Wiki in Africa YouTube channel and follow Wiki Africa on social media.